Hello, everybody, and welcome to Big Blue Kickoff live on this Friday afternoon, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the Giants. Still a little bleary-eyed, but we're back from the Hackensack Meridian Health Podcast Studio. Keep getting better. John Schmeelk, Matthew Citak with you. We're going to take a bunch of your calls today, folks, at 201-939-4513. If you want a lot of reaction and talking about the players the Giants drafted last night, I suggest you go back on the Giants YouTube channel or on the Giants Huddle podcast feed and go check out our reaction to the two picks last night. We take some calls, but there's a lot of discussion about the players, what they are, and what they bring to the Giants. We welcome everybody joining us on YouTube. We'll be streaming on YouTube the rest of the way here on Big Blue Kickoff Live, which we're very excited about. And get on the lines, give us a call at 201-939-4513. Well, Matthew Citak, the scenario that went down last night is basically the scenario we were talking about for the better part of 2 days on the show. The Giants select Abdul Carter at pick number 3, and then they trade back up into the first round, swapping picks 34 and 25. The price for that swap was the Giants' second third-round pick this year, their comp pick at 99, and then next year's third-round pick as well to select Jaxson Dart. Your take on the night?
My take on the night overall, I think it was a very positive night for the Giants. I mean, again, the selection of Abdul Carter, everyone was expecting that one. There was no surprise. You know, the last mock draft tracker we put out yesterday, basically every single analyst was saying Abdul. So there's no surprise there. The move for Dart, while there was a lot of smoke, as we discussed yesterday, there was a lot of smoke around that move. Still was a little bit of a surprise. You didn't know for sure if they were going to...
Apparently there was fire where there was smoke this time.
There was. That's why I admit I was wrong about that yesterday.
Yeah, me too.
I was leaning towards that being just smoke without the fire. Clearly, there was a lot of interest in Jaxson Dart. That was real. Honestly, I'm totally cool with the trade because you look at the compensation they gave up, it really wasn't that much. You know, apparently Joe said, I think he said this last night, that he was adamant about wanting to keep the 65th pick, that first pick in the third round, which he ended up being able to keep. They gave up the 99th pick and next year's third. And, you know, to compare that to a similar deal that went down, the Atlanta Falcons traded into the pick, one pick behind the Giants, pick number 26. Granted, they were coming from further back than the Giants. I think they were at, I want to say, maybe 46. Yep. So they were moving up 20 spots as opposed to the Giants that moved up 9. But Atlanta had to give up their first round pick next year. That is a hefty price. And they were moving up for a defensive end. And everyone knows that when you trade up in the draft looking for a quarterback, the team you're moving up for is going to charge you a little bit of a premium because you're moving up for a quarterback and how important that position is. Compare those two trades. Giants seem like came out with a bit of a steal in terms of the trade compensation alone.
Now, in fairness, the Falcons did get a fourth-round pick 101. Or is that end of the third round or start of the fourth round?
That is
end of the third round, correct?
101. Yeah,
end of the third round.
I think it's the last. They
did get a third-round pick back for that, so they did get another pick in addition. But trading next year's one is obviously a very, very high cost.
Yeah, a huge cost. And so there were two teams that received first-round picks in next year's draft last night, the Rams and the Browns. Now, the Browns have the first pick in the round 2. Shedeur Sanders is still on the board. They might go ahead and take him there. We don't know. I think he's currently the favorite to go. Whether it's them picking or someone else picking there, who's to say? But those two teams have now set themselves up in pretty good position in next year's draft to be able to maneuver around the board and land a quarterback, which makes me think they might not be targeting a quarterback tonight.
And by the way, just for the Giants, not having a 3 next year wouldn't prohibit them from moving around either. Obviously, it makes it a little bit tougher, but again, you still have flexibility next year, and you can always get that pick back in a midseason trade if you trade, somebody out, and you can get a pick back that way too.
Not even a midseason trade. I was thinking perhaps tonight. The Giants have that 65th pick. We've been talking for weeks about how the 34th pick and the 65th pick, if the Giants wanted to trade back, would be pretty valuable picks. 34 definitely more so than 65 because 34 you had all day today with teams clamoring over the best players available.
You would probably have to drop out of the third round completely if you want to get a third. If you want to get a third round pick for that, yeah.
Really? I was thinking if you drop maybe like 20 spots, which is obviously you're going from a different tier.
No. I don't think you can get another full pick in that round. I think to move 20 spots in the third round, you probably get a fourth round pick for that.
All right. I would then take a fourth. If you could drop, let's say, call it 15-ish picks, pick up a 4th rounder next year. So you did lose that 3rd rounder next year, but now you have 2 4s. That puts you in good position to be able to maneuver around the draft board next year if you so choose.
Just to give you an idea, and again, the Jimmy Johnson trade chart is a little bit antiquated, for lack of a better pick. Let's say you want to go from pick 265 to pick 65 to, let's say, pick 85. That's 20 spots, right?
Yeah.
That's 100 picks on the draft board. That would be the 100th pick in this year's draft. So that would be a pick right at the top of the 4th round or very bottom of the 3rd. So you would basically be looking at a pick at the top of the 4th round in that situation.
Okay. Well, just, something to consider.
Yep.
No idea of, what the interest in doing that tonight
No,
is.
but you're right. The bottom line is that you can pick up some capital for next year if you want to move down from 65.
Or
your overall point is absolutely correct.
Or as you said, move a player at some point. Obviously there's a long way to go between now, the trade deadline, but next year's draft, they could end up trading someone for additional draft capital if they so choose. There's a lot of options on the table. But in terms of the pick of Dart itself, you and I have both been saying this. If Brian Daboll came out of this evaluation process, this pre-draft process, evaluating all these quarterbacks, spending a lot of time on all of these quarterbacks, if he came out of it saying, this is my guy, I think I can develop this guy, I think we can win with this guy. If Brian Daboll felt that way about a guy, we both said we are all for moving up back into the 1st round, whatever the cost might be, in order to get that guy. And listening to Brian Daboll speak last night after the trade, it is very, very clear and obvious that Jaxson Dart is his guy. He is, pretty confident that they will be able to help him develop. There's no rush to get him on the field with Russ and Jameis both under contract and Tommy. So there's no rush. He can basically, if they want, he can redshirt the entire year if they so choose. I don't know if they'll go that far, but that is an option considering the depth that they have at the quarterback position. But it is very clear that Brian Daboll loves Jaxson Dart, and wanted him as his signal caller on this team moving forward. So with Brian Daboll having that conviction about him, I'm all for this. Because as we've said, he has a very good ability in evaluating quarterbacks. I trust his ability to look at this crop of guys and pick one out, which clearly he did because, as we know, Shedeur Sanders is still on the board, and clearly Dart was his guy over Shedeur. So I'm going to trust Brian Daboll on this because he is known to be the quarterback guru. So I'm very happy with how the first night played out.
All right, let me just give you my brief notes on Dart here that I can read through them all. I'll read my little summary here. So basically, as I wrote down, solid quarterback that when in rhythm plays on time with solid anticipation, good pocket presence that steps up well in the pocket around the rush. More accurate in the short to intermediate range and very accurate in the short intermediate range, and has some really good deep throws on tape, but he only has above average arm strength. It's good. It's not elite, but it's good. It's above average. And at times, when he wasn't able to set his feet and do his thing, he would have some underthrows and poor location on some of those deep throws. But overall, good deep ball thrower. And then, again, and I always talk about what makes a quarterback really tough to evaluate, right? It's figuring out how they see the game, how they do progressions and stuff like that. And what I wrote down is that a college offense that comes up with some easy answers for the quarterback makes it hard to evaluate some of his decision-making because you don't know how he's reading, what he's reading, and obviously
totally fair.
That's what Brian Daboll gets out of those meetings with him. And the way someone put it to me last night, does this player understand how to execute a play, or does he understand the underlying concepts that explain why you're running the play? And you have quarterbacks that when they get out there can easily say, all right, well, if this safety goes here, then you throw that guy. If this safety goes here, you throw to the other guy. That's fine. That's not enough to play quarterback in the NFL. There's too many people moving around. It's chaos. Defense is trying to fool you. You need to understand the concepts, why you're running it, how you're trying to manipulate the defense within a play. And I think what you get out of some of these meetings with these players is you learn how much they really understand the concepts, how they read through them, if they understand why they're doing certain things, not just that they're doing certain things. And I think that's really important for the quarterback situation. And it certainly appears that, remember, Brian Daboll has a lot of connections with Ole Miss from his former coaching mentor, Charlie Weiss, when he was a young coach. Charlie Weiss's son is the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach at Ole Miss. Joe Judge is at Ole Miss as well, who coached with Brian Daboll in New England. So he has plenty of access to people at Ole Miss to get information on this player. He obviously met with the player up close and personal as well. So I think he probably got those answers, and he feels good based on those answers that you can develop Dart with taking some time, no need to rush this, into a good NFL quarterback. And I think that's where they landed.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mentioned this several times in the last month or two, but we got just a little glimpse into Brian Daboll's quarterback evaluation process last year with Hard Knocks. We saw...
And not just Daboll, Joe Shanes as well.
Of course. Mm-hmm. But, we saw, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, up on the J.J. McCarthy up on the whiteboard. We saw a little bit of what Daboll, Shane, the front office, the coaching staff put these quarterbacks through. And again, we only got a very, very small window to it. They are going through a very thorough evaluation and sort of like a thorough test with these guys on the whiteboard, watching film, dissecting film. So again, throughout all of that, if you come out of it and your coaching staff is like, this is our guy. Like, we think we can very much develop this guy into a starting caliber NFL quarterback, and a good one at that. Then you have to make the pick. You have to make the move to go get that guy.
Yeah, and I thought just watching him, I watched 3 more games yesterday just to kind of make sure I had a feel for him. He throws some really good touch where he's got to get the ball right over a linebacker to get it into a tight end over the linebacker's head, or get it layered between a corner and a safety. He's able to put some really nice touch on some of those balls, and he gets it in there accurately. I thought that was a really good factor in his play. And we talked about this with some of the other quarterbacks in the class, how they handle pressure. He likes to go forwards, and we talked about some of the problems some quarterbacks have in going backwards and retreating from a pass rush. That's usually not going to work for you. He will step up in the pocket, and he'll run a lot. He has a lot of scrambles. He doesn't scramble to throw a ton. Some of it's there, but he scrambles to run a lot. Over 1,500 rushing yards at Ole Miss in his career. He's a good athlete. We're going to have the same conversations about please slide and stop trying to run over people, because he played defense growing up. That's what his dad played. Then he was a wing T quarterback for 3 years of high school before he transferred into a more of a passing offense. He's 220 pounds, thick kid. He plays with a lot of fire and aggressiveness and competitiveness. He's going to try to do stuff like that, and they're going to have to pull that back a little bit, because otherwise, we saw what Daniel Jones did. He was here. You're just not going to stay healthy. You need to calm that stuff down a little bit.
Yeah, you definitely got to, I guess, rein it in a little bit.
Yeah.
But I was going to mention his athleticism and his ability to run with the football as a big plus. I mean, you mentioned the over 1,500 rushing yards. Let's not forget, in college football, sack yardage counts against a quarterback's rushing yards. So this 1,500 plus yards throughout his 4 seasons is counting all the yardage that was lost on sacks, and he still finished with that many, 14 rushing touchdowns. As we know, Brian Daboll likes mobile, athletic quarterbacks. Jaxson Dart certainly fills that build. And I know I mentioned this one time in sometime in the last couple of weeks, but Jaxson Dart's younger brother in high school, his name is Diesel Dart.
Diesel Dart.
That is just the best football name I think I've ever heard.
The best part, they look so much alike when they were doing live shots of Dart. They were showing his younger brother instead of him.
At first, we're like, wait, which one's Jaxson? Which one's his brother?
They look very similar. And it's funny, we joked about this yesterday, how the third pick is kind of an afterthought, and we just spent the first 10 minutes of the show or 15 minutes of the show talking about who the Giants traded back up to 24 to pick. We should mention Abdul Carter, because he's kind of a big deal. The best edge rusher coming out in the class, an elite edge rusher. He led FBS in tackles for loss with 23.5, number 2 in pressures with 66, 12.5 sacks, played through a shoulder injury in the Orange Bowl. To kind of show the type of toughness that he has. And by the way, played really well in that game against Notre Dame as well.
The most impressive performance of his, collegiate career.
Which is saying something, because he had some really good games. And he was playing that with a bad shoulder. And it was bad because, by the way, it wasn't healthy at the combine. Like, he wasn't going to forget the foot injury they found at the combine. They weren't going to let him do combine stuff, at least lifting and stuff, with the shoulder. So it was a real injury that he played through.
Yeah, guys, we see guys battle through injuries all the time in the NFL and in college, but most of the time, you can't really tell how much pain the guys go through. With Abdul Carter in that bowl game, you could tell like he was in so much pain, and yet he was still basically unstoppable out there.
He has an edge to him, and he plays with an edge. He plays with a mean streak. He plays with a nastiness. That's what you want out of a guy that you're sending after the opposing quarterback every game. So just go through the notes really quickly there to have an Abdul Carter. Keep in mind, this is his first year playing edge, and I think that's a good thing to keep in mind when I read these notes to you. So I like, as I watch the games, I just write down the notes that I see. Twitchy, good swim move. Speed to win on the edge. Burst. Lines up everywhere. 2-point stance, 3-point stance. Joker rusher. Standing up behind the defensive line. Spin move. Rip move. Can win with power. Swipe move with a chop. Ghost move. Ducks under. Good dip and rip. Can bend on the outside and win. Has a lot of quickness. So for a guy that is a first-year edge rusher, I just listed around 7 pass rush moves. He has developed very quickly. I still think there's more room to develop. He can do speed to power. I think that's probably where he has to get a little bit stronger, where, holding up the double teams and, things of that nature, and just winning with the bull rush consistently, aside from the speed to power stuff. And he's not quite as long as I don't think as Micah Parsons was, but he's a really, really good pass rusher, and he wins in a lot of ways. He's a super athlete, and he plays with a mean streak. Can't go wrong.
Yeah, I mean, there is a reason why he was considered one of the 2 can't-miss blue-chip prospects in this draft, along with Travis Hunter. I mean, those 2 were – everyone was consensus that those 2 were on a tier of their own ahead of anyone else. Only thing I'll add is last night, Micah Parsons doing his live podcast, whatever.
Was he broadcasting live during the draft?
Yeah.
Of course he was.
He said that he thinks the Giants now have the best defensive line in the NFC East, and he would take the Giants line over the Eagles line. Now, again, this is Micah Parsons speaking, not Matthew Citak. Just want to make that clear. But that was Micah Parsons speaking, genuinely saying he thinks the Giants now have the best line, at least in the division. I was saying if the Giants added Abdul Carter, I think they'd have one of the best defensive lines in the NFL. I obviously still feel that way.
Well, considering the Eagles might have the best, these statements might not be incongruous with each other.
That's true. Again, I'm not saying the Giants' D-line is now better than the Eagles. I have to see it first, because the Eagles' defensive line has had that success, as we saw in the Super Bowl. But the Giants' group of guys that they have up there now, and it may not even be done, because they still have the 65th pick tonight, 105 tomorrow, where there could be another defensive tackle potentially added.
Yep.
But the Giants' defensive line has got to be in the mix now, among the best in the league. I mean, just between Abdul Carter, Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau on the edge alone, then you have potentially the best interior defensive lineman in Dexter Lawrence. It's tough to name many defensive lines better than that group right there.
No, they're good. It is difficult to name groups better than that. So just a fun night for the Giants. They had 2 players at the 2 most important positions in football, pass rusher and quarterback, and I think Giant fans should be pretty excited. All right, so let's get your reactions at 201-939-4513, 201-939-4513. I mentioned it earlier. You want to check out our reaction videos. They're on the Giants YouTube channel. We put them all together as one podcast in the Giants Huddle podcast feed if you want the audio of it. Again, Giants YouTube channel, Giants app, giants.com/podcast. Search for it on your favorite podcast platform. It's all there. And just a reminder, we are going to go live tonight. We thought we were going to do 3 separate short shows based on the Giants pick situation. Well, now we just got to do one. So we're going to go on for an hour tonight, right after the Giants select at pick number 65, and we'll take your calls and react to what the Giants do with that pick at the top of round number 3. Make sure you tune into that on the Giants app, giants.com, or, of course, the Giants YouTube channel. All right, 201-939-4513, 201-939-4513. Thanks for being with us. Let's go to the phones right here on Giants.com. Pierce, I don't have the document. Who's up first? I'm bringing it up. We're going to go James in Georgia. James, what's going on, pal? Thank you, Matt.
What's going on, guys?
How are you doing, man?
Happy days.
You too.
Thank you.
I like what we did yesterday. Apparently, Jaxson Dart won out the conversation between he and Shador. I called last week and I was banging my hand on the table for Shador like I was with Jaden Daniels. I was actually on the phone with my brother when they traded the pick. That's exactly what we were going through with scenarios. Like, we need to trade back in from 25 to 30, maybe 31. Since we already got Abdul Carter, I feel like he's such a talent that it now does make sense to trade it back outside of the first round, which they did. So just to, round out the draft, who do you see as, I think, our next greatest position would be somebody next to Dexter Lawrence, in that, who can we target in that area? I know you got to see who starts to come off the board. And a last point, I guess a fun fact, that how much of a unicorn is, had the Knicks playing, you had the draft, had the Rangers had a better season. They might have been in the playoff game yesterday. And you might have had the Yankees playing an early game, like an early away game or home game yesterday. So if you're one of those core New York fans that like those four teams, it would have been a great day for you. But, of course, the Rangers, they're sitting at home. But just to, like I said, round out the draft, who do you think we can target in the third round if we're going position-specific and maybe at defensive tackle, and maybe whatever y'all might think our second, because I think Joe Shane has been doing a good.
All right, James, appreciate the call.
Thank you, James.
Your phone's cutting out a little bit, but I think we got the gist of your
Before
question.
you get into the round two, guys, I just want to quickly point out that there is a local hockey team that is actually in the playoffs, the New Jersey Devils.
Mr. New Jersey.
And there's another New York baseball team that currently has the best record in baseball.
That is true.
So I'm going to pretend to not be too offended by no mention of the Devils or Mets there, James.
That is true, but it definitely was a fun sports night in New York last night. I was a little annoyed I couldn't watch the Knicks playoff game. I watched
But they won.
I watched
They won for you.
I did. I watched the first quarter before the draft started, as we were sitting here with all the shenanigans going on stage and just whatever.
And now Game 4 is Sunday, so you'll be able to watch.
And then as I did work this morning and I tweeted out some of our content, I had the game on in the background at the house before I dragged my rear end into work today. So good win for the Knicks. I was very excited about that. So, James, it's a great question, and I understand why you asked it. The problem is that there's going to be 32 players selected before the Giants pick at 65. Yep. So which one of those 32 players ends up getting drafted? I think that's going to be tough to predict.
How about positions?
Sure. Why don't we do that?
You know, as we've always said, you don't want to pigeonhole yourself to a specific position at a specific pick.
But we can go through a few of them.
There are a couple of positions where, again, best player available might meet somewhat of a need of the Giants roster.
Where do you want to go first?
I will start up front with the trenches, either side.
All right. So do you want to go offensive line first? We'll stick
offensive line first. Yes.
All right. So the guys that I would keep an eye on, if you're looking for an offensive tackle, I doubt he'll get there, but Ariante Ursary out of Minnesota, someone I'd keep an eye on. Jonas Savanea is a tackle converted to a guard that I would keep an eye on out of Arizona, correct. In terms of, that's all my second round grades. Let's go to the next round. Wyatt Millum, a tackle guard convert out of West Virginia. Tate Ratledge, the straight up guard out of Georgia. If you're looking for a...
Pearson likes Tate Ratledge.
He's the mullet guy, right?
Mullet plus mustache.
It's
a great killer combo right there.
Charles Grant out of William and Mary is more of a project. I'm not sure if that's where you want to go, but you can. He's got a really good feet and he's a good athlete. He's an offensive tackle. Marcus Mbow out of Purdue is another player. He can play up and down the line, a bunch of different positions. Jared Wilson, the center out of Georgia, if you want to go there. You want another tackle, Ozzie Trapelo, the offensive tackle out of Boston College, who's a big guy. He's more of a right tackle than a left tackle. That's someone you could talk about. Anthony Belton, the big offensive tackle out of NC State, someone you can have a conversation about. Emory Jones, the tackle, and I think he's probably more of a guard in the National Football League. He's someone that you could talk about at the top of the third round as well. Those are the major names, I think, on the offensive line that I would be keeping an eye on with that pick at 65.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, you had an even longer list than I was going to give.
Yeah, honestly, I was dipping into some fourth round guys but I wanted to give the names that I had. So
no, that's fair. But yeah, definitely some interesting names on that list. Minnesota, how do you pronounce his name?
Ariante Ursary.
Yes, that. I think that would be a great pick at 65. Again, I don't know if he's going to make it there. If he does, I would, strongly consider him, put him in strong consideration. Arizona guard as well, Tate Ratledge from Georgia. There definitely will be some talented interior offensive linemen. There will also be some talented interior defensive linemen. There's a couple that have been, linked to the Giants or projected to the Giants in a lot of mock drafts. I'll just throw out 2 names, one of which I've, not made my desire for him to be added to the Giants a secret lately, but Alfred Collins from Texas. We kind of were speaking that we thought his range would maybe be in that 65, between 65 and 99.
Yep.
65 might be a tiny bit high, but he was maybe not going to make it to 99. Well, the Giants don't have 99 anymore, so if you want him, you're probably going to have to take him at 65. The other guy, Joshua Farmer from Florida State, I feel like he sort of dropped in a lot of the rankings throughout this pre-draft process, at least in the immediate lead up to the draft the last couple of weeks. But if he's there at 65, I feel like that would be another pick where best player available or a player very near the top of your board meets a position where you could afford to add another body.
Yeah, I'll split this up into kind of 3 techs and pluggers. So if you're looking for 3 tech types, those are more of your little smaller upfield pass rushers. That's going to line up in between the guard and the tackle. Darius Alexander, TJ Sanders. Not sure if those 2 guys will get to 65, but they're names that are still available, so I'll bring them up. Shamar Turner out of Texas A&M, who's a very good player. You mentioned Alfred Collins is on the plugger side. Ty Robinson is kind of a dual guy. He could do a little bit of both. He's a guy that I think is going to be a 3rd-round pick. Omar Norman Lott is more of your twitchy 3 technique.
A smaller side.
Yeah, he 285, I think, at the combine.
Gets after the quarterback.
Yeah, so those are kind of the athletic upfield guys that I would keep an eye on. If you're looking for more of the bigger plugger types, you mentioned Alfred Collins. That's a great name. He's my highest rated plugger type left since Tyleik Williams got picked in the 1st round. It's funny, all those guys we were talking about as potential picks at 34 for the Giants, they all got picked.
Donovan Jackson,
Tyler Booker.
They're
all gone.
Josh, I don't even know if we ever considered Josh Simmons. We kind of thought he would go, but he went.
Josh Connerly gone
at the
too.
very end. Yeah, Josh Connerly.
All of them were gone, by the way.
Which
actually made me feel better about the trade because all those guys on the defensive and offensive line we really wanted in that spot, they're all gone.
Yeah.
They're all gone.
We don't need to go through the whole mock draft. There's just one pick I want to give us a little credit for.
Actually, I think we did a pretty good job on that mock draft, to be honest. I think we did really well.
The Derek Harmon to Pittsburgh pick.
Yeah, that's pretty good, right?
As soon as it happened, I knew it. Everyone thought the quarterback. No, Derek Harmon was just such a Mike Tomlin Steelers defense pick.
Did we also get Barron correct too, or is it Hairston that I got right to Buffalo? I think I got Hairston to Buffalo too, right?
I think in both of the mock drafts, I think we might have had Hairston to Buffalo.
So let me look at our mock. Well, I'm going to answer the question first, and then and then at the end of the show, we'll go through our mock and
I'll give you 2 other positions
and pat ourselves in the back for 5 minutes before we say goodbye.
I'll give you the 2 other positions, and then you can. Well, I guess there's 3, but the 2 positions.
Oh, actually, real quick, Matt, I didn't give my plugger. So it's Alfred Collins, who was a good one.
Yep.
Deion Walker is another big guy you could talk about, but he's a back thing.
I was gonna say the injury.
You don't know about that. Jordan Phillips and C.J. West are 2 third-round guys that I feel really good about being good NFL players. You mentioned Joshua Farmer. He's kind of a tweener. He can plug and he can get upfield. I think he's both. Jamari Caldwell, I have more of a 4th-round guy, so maybe he's 105, but he's a plugger type that I think would be good. And then Aeneas Peebles, who again is also like a 4th, 5th-round guy out of Virginia. Virginia Tech, right?
Yeah,
Aeneas Peebles, I believe, correct. Yeah.
Even discounting the last couple of names you gave, that was a long list of defensive tackles.
Well, that's what we talked. This is the sweet spot for it.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the
I
sweet
don't
spot.
think all of those guys are going to go tonight,
they're
which
not.
means with Giants with the 3rd pick in the 4th round tomorrow, there's a good chance that at least one of those guys will be available.
And we talked about 65 all along, for me at least, being the defensive tackle sweet spot because I thought all those guys in that first group could be gone. Turns out they are, depending on, unless you think Darius Alexander's in that first group. You might. Some people do.
I do like Darius Alexander a lot.
I think based on who was available, and why don't we have that, once we finish this list, let's have the hypothetical if the Giants did not go up to 25, who we would pick here, because I think that's an interesting conversation.
Okay.
But who's your next position? What do you want to hit next?
The other 2 positions, let's go real quick.
Yes.
I would say running back. And
agreed.
This one, slightly maybe a surprise, but I think tight end would be in consideration depending on who might be there. I think there are some tight ends that if they drop,
I would throw wide receiver in too.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. The only reason I didn't say it is because I feel like, and I've read a lot of analysts that are a lot more plugged in, obviously, than me.
Right.
And have been saying today that they think there is going to be a big run on offensive playmakers, but especially at the wide receiver position early.
I have
tonight.
not read anything about what might happen tonight yet. I have not gotten there.
I've just seen, like the Matt Millers,
They're all
Daniel
saying,
Jeremiah
I'm not
saying
surprised.
you
So-
expect a run on offensive playmakers,
for-
but a leaning towards the wide receiver position.
Luther Burden, Jalen Knoll, Jaden Higgins,
the
Jack
two
Bash.
Iowa State guys.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, potentially even throw Kyle Williams.
Yep.
In that
Jalen Royals maybe could be in that mix
Jalen
too.
Royals,
Yep. No,
but
I'm with you.
when you go to the tight end position, you got Elijah Arroyo, Mason Taylor. I feel like I'm
Harold
65.
Fannin.
You think 65 is a little too early for Fannin, or you think he's in that range?
I think he's in that range.
Okay. He would definitely. I mean,
Terrence Ferguson
he was amazing.
would
last
probably be
year,
in that
Harold
range too. Terrence Ferguson would be the other tight
Fannin.
end.
Yeah,
that
and
would be in
then
that range.
in terms of the running backs, because we discussed this earlier in the week.
I don't think Taylor and Fannin are getting there. I mean, I don't think Taylor and Arroyo are getting there.
I don't think
I think
so
both
either.
of them are going to be
Fannin
gone.
maybe.
No, I think Fannin has a
And
chance.
Fannin had a phenomenal season last year. He was
I do.
amazing.
I agree.
But yeah, running back, just based on the reports about who the Giants brought in for visits, it seems like they have at least some level of interest in adding a running back at some point. So I feel like in 65, you gotta consider it as well, depending on who's there. I mean,
I have a lot of names. You want me to rattle them off?
we only
for
saw
you?
two running backs go last night.
Which I think is people thought one or two. I don't think people thought more than two would go. Travion Henderson
I think
was
it
kind
was
of the third
it was. I think everyone was saying like 2 with a chance of a third.
one. So you think like the over-under would have been 2.5?
I think that's
I think probably.
what it,
Yeah, I
it
agree
would
with
have
you.
been, because
I'm with you on
in
that.
Daniel Jeremiah's last mock, he had Trayvon Henderson
Yep.
going to the
He
Rams
did.
in
That's
the first
true.
round. So, but yeah, there are a lot of really good running backs that are still on the board. You can go through your list. but
It's long. I'm
the
gonna
two
go
Ohio
quick.
State guys in particular, there's no way they'd drop to 65.
Yeah.
But oh boy, if somehow one of them did, I would very, very much consider taking one of them.
You mentioned the two Ohio State guys, Quinshawn Junkins, Travion Henderson, Caleb Johnson, who has connections to Liddell Betts, is someone to keep an eye on. Cam Scatabo, obviously,
Yep.
out of
State.
Arizona State, who's really, really good. Dylan Sampson out of Tennessee. Damian Martinez out of Miami. And then that's where I think you kind of have like I really love R.J. Harvey. I have him with a late second round grade. Not many other people do. So I'll put him into that next group based on consensus.
He's the small
Out of
back,
UCF,
right?
yeah.
Really
Oh,
small.
he's really
like
good.
Darren Sproles.
Oh, no, he's
a little bigger?
He's like 5'9", 200 pounds.
Oh, he's 5'9".
He's okay. Yeah, he isn't like Lance Meadows size. He's a little bigger than that. He's more Pearson Butler sized.
Throwing shots at Lance when he's not even here to protect himself.
Oh, that's what I do.
By
Absolutely.
the way, at the Combine website, they have him listed 5'8", 205.
5'8",
That's pretty
205. Okay.
stocky.
No, he's
It's like
thick.
a little bowling
no,
ball.
he's not tall, but he's thick.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right, 100%. And then so the next group would be the R.J. Harveys, Devin Neal, Jordan James, DJ Giddens, Bayshell Tootin, Brashard Smith. That would be the next group
Where's
for
like
me.
Ollie
at
Gordon
running
on
back.
your list? Further
Fourth.
down, obviously.
I have him in around 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you could even, again, we've spoken about this. You could wait till tomorrow and potentially get a guy like, Taj Brooks.
Yeah, and I think
Late.
Taj Brooks would be a really good 4th round pick. He's a good football player.
Yeah. So again, we've spoken a lot
Yeah.
the last few months about how deep this running back class is. So to sum it up, I would say at least position-wise, the trenches on either side, or potentially an offensive playmaker.
Yeah.
Again, running back, receiver, or tight end. What better way to help Jaxson Dart, Russell Wilson, the whole quarterback room, than add another weapon to the mix? Can't go wrong.
100%.
And I'd say there's a small chance, maybe cornerback, just because that's another. I don't think I'd put all of those other positions
in the draft, not
clearly.
at 65.
I'd put all those other positions clearly ahead of cornerback.
Yeah.
But if there's a good quarterback that somehow drops, I wouldn't be shocked if they made that.
I think you could see 4 corners off the round in round 2. I think Savon Ravel's going to go. Trey Amos will go. Azariah
Johnson's
Thomas
gonna
will
finally
go.
go.
That's 5. It's funny. I didn't have my first round listed
Exactly.
in front
I
of me.
can't believe. I mean, the injury concern.
No, Will Johnson,
Johnson
didn't go.
did not go because of the injury concerns.
I told you he might fall yesterday.
You were right.
Well, that was from Tony. I don't want to take the credit from Tony. But look, I haven't been as high on Will Johnson as everyone else this whole process. So
Paul was incredibly high on him.
I'm going to pop my collar on that one a little bit and feel
It's like
better
Paul
about it.
poo-pooed me when in the mock
Poo-pooed.
draft when I said Jahdae Barron was going to go before Will Johnson. He acted as if I said the biggest travesty in the world. Meanwhile, looks like I was right on that.
I love it. Let's go to Hugo in New Jersey. He's up next. Hey, Hugo.
Hey, guys. Actually, you hit on a lot of what I wanted to talk about. The first thing being the run to the strength of the draft. So 10 defensive front players were taken, 8 offensive line players. And as you guys mentioned, a lot of the targets at the top of round 2 that we talked about at 34 are gone. So let's hope something good comes to us at 65.
Yeah, by the way, the first round guys that are left, Hugo, just so I didn't really list those guys, Mike Green and Donovan Ezaraku are still there. Nick Scorton is still there. Will Johnson's still there. And Nick Emanwari, the big safety, is still on the board. So those would be kind of the guys that I had either real first-round grades on or kind of like borderline first-round grades on that have not been picked yet either.
Right. And after 20, I had to shake my head, let's say, 5 times, because there are these teams that are really good teams in the NFL, and you could just see how they get value. They win every year. They pick late but get value.
Let me guess: the Ravens, the Eagles, the Chiefs.
The Derek Harmon to the Steelers,
Yep,
Malachi
that's 1,
Stark
2.
to the Ravens,
Yep.
Tyreek Williams to the Lions, Jahad Campbell to the Eagles, and Josh Simmons to the Chiefs. When they were on the clock, I predicted all 5 of them. So, yeah, you don't have to go too far to figure out why those teams are good and consistently good.
Very true.
No question.
So to our picks, I mean, Abdul Carter, I've been on the Abdul Carter bandwagon since January. And you remember we used to say Saquon Barkley, he's not just a running back, he's a offensive weapon. I kind of think of Abdul Carter serving the same way because he's got so many magnificent traits. He's just excellent at a lot of things.
Yeah, but the key, Hugo, is that he's not just a weapon, though. He's a great edge rusher, but he can also be a weapon. It's not like and by the way, I'm not saying you were making this point, but it's not like where it's Isaiah Simmons when he came out. It's like, yeah, he's a really good player. You just got to figure out where to put him. No, you know where to put Abdul Carter. It's just that you can put him other places if you want to get creative, which is a big difference.
This player has good instincts on top of just his magnificent athletic ability.
And Brian Dable said that last night, by the way.
He's young and he's going to get stronger, so that part of his game we think should come along. So, to me, it was almost like a no-brainer. I really think he's the best player in the draft. When it comes to the quarterback, well, let me take a big picture view here. I got to give Joe Shane credit in that the QB room he put together didn't suck up a lot of monetary resources or a lot of draft capital. So I got to give him credit for that. Maybe it wasn't intended that way when we were thinking about Stafford and Rodgers and stuff, but I think where he ended up, given the constraints he was facing, is in a pretty good place. Now, when it comes to the quarterback, I'm kind of lukewarm. I'm taking a wait and see approach, and the reason why I say that is, I just don't see any exceptional traits for the quarterback we picked for Jaxson Dart.
No, but he's pretty good at everything, Hugo. I think you're right. I think the only thing I'd say is exceptional is probably his toughness and that sort of stuff. But no, is he a Lamar Jackson athlete? No. Is he a Josh Allen arm? No. Is he a Drew Brees processor? No.
Exactly.
But is he a Troy Aikman accuracy guy? No. But he's above average to good at everything, and he's 220 pounds. So I think you feel good about that.
Yeah, the thing I did is I went back and looked at where sort of the experts had him slotted, and it was mostly like second or third round. And you guys have done the math for us in the past. People who have those kind of grades usually don't make it at a high level, but he's young and he's with a good coaching staff, so let's hope for the best. But I'm a bit skeptical, but hoping for the best.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks for the
Hugo.
call. Good stuff. And look, this has been my argument all along. You get the guy in the room, you try to develop him. If it works, great. If it doesn't, you find the next guy.
Yeah, I mean, look, we went into this draft knowing it was not the best quarterback class overall. And, after Cam Ward, it's not like he's a sure thing by any means. I mean, even Daniel Jeremiah in his final prospect rankings had him as the 8th top prospect. So not even number 1, which is where he went, obviously. But we knew it wasn't the best class overall. So anyone after Cam Ward obviously comes with some risk. I don't think anyone's going to deny that. There's no such thing as a sure thing in the NFL, especially at the quarterback position. But you gotta take some shots. And again, as I said earlier, it is very, very clear that Brian Daboll has confidence in being able to develop Jaxson Dart to get him to a level where he will be able to lead this franchise. And if the front office and the coaching staff feel that way, who are we to argue against?
No, you do it.
See what the kid's got.
You do it. And look, we talked about, and it might turn out, folks, that the Giants could have just stuck at 34 and picked him.
Maybe.
Who knows? You can't take that chance.
We'll never know.
You don't know that ahead of time.
The Rams could have taken him.
The Rams, and I
the
texted
Browns
somebody
could have
that
traded up.
covers LA. I'm trying to get some clearance on whether or not that was the case or not. But if he's still there, maybe another team trades up and gets him before 34. There's going to be no way to ever. Maybe the Browns would. There's going to be no way to know for sure.
The three teams that, if you want to believe the reports leading up to yesterday, that had done the most work on Jaxson Dart, they were the Giants, the Browns, and the Rams. This is what maybe it was either Field Yates, Schmeelk, one of the very the top guys in the industry were saying that. So
it wouldn't shock me if the Saints were a team that would make a move for him either.
Or the Saints. Yeah. The Saints were also in the mix of teams that had done a lot of work on him. So the Rams obviously could have taken him at 26. The Browns, after that trade back from 2 to 5, picked up an additional second round pick plus, I believe, later pick, a day 3 pick as well that they could have used. They could have easily moved up if Jaxson Dart was their guy. So the Giants were getting ahead of the Rams. They were getting ahead of the Browns, the Saints, as you mentioned. So it was not the most expensive trade to move up. They gave up 99 and next year's third. If Jaxson Dart ends up being the quarterback for this franchise, that will go down as a humongous steal of a trade for the Giants.
And a second round pick and a couple of thirds is worth the price to pay for that opportunity.
100%.
201. And again, you managed to keep 65, which I know is very important to the Giants. Pearson, I'm just warning you, we are going to go a little bit later than 1:30 today, so buckle up. Are you okay with that? Yeah. You don't have a ton of going on. You all right? No. I'll make sure we get us out of here for lunch. Just be prepared.
Lunch is the only thing.
I know. And I also have to eat. So trust me, I'll make sure we get us in there for lunch. But I'm going to get as many callers in as we can here. And we don't have a ton going on until the guys come here for the press conference, which is a little bit later on. Let's go to Aiden in Boston. He's up next. Hi, Aiden.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
What's up, buddy?
Hey, so first things first, I want to say that I'm really happy that we got Abdul Carter. I think he's the immediate impact defensive player we need. And now, I want to touch on Jaxson Dart a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's the right fit for New York. I'm glad we traded for him and got him instead of Sanders. And I think he has the right tools and everything. And Brian Daboll's the kind of guy who can help develop this guy. And I'm glad that he'd be learning from Russell Wilson, who's a true pro and everything. But my concern with him, I think Matt said this in another show in the past, that it's not a great quarterback class, and I don't think he'll ever be able to turn into a top 10 quarterback. And when you look at the quarterbacks in this day and age in the NFL, the top 10 ones, those are the ones who are end up their teams are true contenders each year, and you want to be able to have a chance. And I think it's really going to be tough to be able to hone him in like that. But it's a matter of time.
Well, let me put it this way. Here you go.
Point. I think after that.
Okay. What's your second point, and then we'll answer your questions.
Yeah, I'll do. And then my second point is that I'm just worried, just because how I feel how much of a project he is. I feel he really has to have that Eli Manning kind of clutch gene to be able to go on a run and stuff, and through the playoffs and just even throughout the regular season. But I feel he has a good situation around him, especially you have a really young team around him. But I want to know your guys' thoughts on that, and how much time should you give him, especially, Russell Wilson's on a 1-year deal, and then Jameis is on a 2-year deal, and you just have to see how it goes, but how much patience can you bring giving in a new quarterback? And then I think, plus, in addition to that, based on how he plays, I think that definitely takes on the evaluation of Brian Daboll and Joe Shane.
The fastest, and appreciate the call, Aiden, good stuff.
Yeah.
The fastest I would consider putting Jaxson Dart in the game is November. The fastest.
I was gonna say halfway through the season.
And that is, I would lean closer to 12 games.
Yeah, I mean,
To be honest with you. And if you can, if the season goes all right and you can have him on the bench for pretty much the entire year and maybe just put him in a couple games at the end, I'm fine with that too. I have no problem with that. Guys, let this guy marinate. Let him figure it out. Let him be in a meeting room with Brian Dable, with Mike Kafka, with Shea Tierney, with Russell Wilson. Let him absorb all this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, look, I said this multiple times leading up to the draft, the last couple of months. In an ideal world, again, this is before the draft, whatever quarterback the Giants emerged with, in an ideal world, that guy doesn't see the field at all this upcoming season. Because that means Russell Wilson is playing great football, the Giants are winning football games, and that guy can spend the entire year on the bench. We obviously don't know. It's only April. We don't know what will happen. But again, I think we can all agree that would clearly be the ideal situation. Let the guy literally have a redshirt year the entire season because the Giants are winning football games, making a run towards the playoffs, and you give him a full year then to sit on the bench, learn, grow. Now, is that going to happen? We don't know. Again, how realistic that is. Chances are he will get on the field towards the end of the season at some point.
Yep.
I agree that I really would not want to put him on the field before the very earliest would be the midpoint of the season. I mean, Eli Manning was the number 1 pick in the draft. He didn't go until what, week 9, week 10?
No,
I think he sat the first 8 or 9 games.
What were they?
Kurt Warner
6-5 when Eli took over.
So more than half
12.
the season.
Let me see what Kurt Warner's record. Yeah, keep going. I'm going to check what Kurt Warner's record was that year.
That was just my point being was Eli Manning was the number 1 pick in that draft, the top quarterback, one of the best quarterback prospects, at least of the last couple of years at that time. And even he had to sit for half the season before getting in.
5-4. So it was after game 9. He was 5-4 that year.
So
Kurt Warner.
So if, again, if the number 1 pick in the draft is sitting over half the season, then a late first-round pick, especially when you have this depth at the quarterback position now, there's no rush to get him in. Let him sit. Let him grow. Let him get accustomed to how the NFL works, NFL speed, reading NFL defenses, and then maybe give him a chance.
Now, I will say this, and I go back to what Kurt Warner told me last year when I talked to him on the podcast, and I was kind of like, Kurt, Jaden Daniels doesn't throw over the middle. I worry about that. In the NFL, you got to throw over the middle in tight spots to succeed, right? And he goes, John, don't be critical of a player if you don't know if he was asked to do what you're being critical of.
Yep.
And I said, you know what, Kurt, that's a great point. If you could just throw slot fades to Malik Neighbors all game and deep post to Brian Thomas, I think you can probably just keep doing that and feel pretty good about it. So maybe once he gets into a true NFL style system and he has to do all the things that you talked about, read NFL defenses, do progressions and all that stuff, maybe this stuff just clicks with Jaxson Dart super fast. And Brian Dable's going to know that based on his meetings. Mike Kafka and Shea Tierney are going to know that based on their meetings and what he does in the practice field of training camp. Is there a chance that all of this goes faster than we think it's going to go? Sure, absolutely. But I think you develop your plan, you see how it's going, and then you change your tactics and strategy as you move forward once you have more evidence as to how he's going to handle it. So I think we'll have to see how he does, how he looks in preseason. I wouldn't take too much out of preseason, guys. I'm going to warn you ahead of time. Don't take too much out of preseason. Super simple defenses. Teams aren't trying to scheme you up against you. And some really bad quarterbacks have looked really good in preseason games.
I think we've learned our lesson on that front the last couple of preseasons.
Have we? Have we?
I hope so.
Have we?
I certainly hope so.
I've been doing this for 20 years. I've seen it for 20 years. People still haven't learned their lessons on preseason games.
All right. Well, just one other thing that Aiden said. You mentioned that Jaxson Dart had a 2nd or 3rd round grade. I had not seen that really in the lead up to the draft. I always saw it more of late 1st, maybe early 2nd round grade on him.
I saw mid-second mostly. I think Dane Bruler had him as his...
No one had him as a 3rd round pick, though, that you saw, did you?
Nate Tice might have, who I talked to, but there weren't many. He had, let's see, what did Dane have?
I think he had him at 30, if I remember correctly, 39.
It was 49.
49 maybe?
Yeah, there was definitely a 9 in there. I was trying to remember if it was 49 or 59, and I didn't remember which one it was.
Well,
but I will double check that right now.
But to Aiden's point, or something Aiden was saying, is that in making this trade and selection of Jaxson Dart, you're almost, betting on Brian Dable as much as you are betting on Jaxson Dart. I mean, clearly, again,
sure.
Brian Dable was obviously everyone in the front office and coaching staff, there was collaboration. Everyone agreed on the pick, wanted Jaxson Dart. But Brian Dable clearly was,
49. He was 49. And Shook
okay.
was 50. They were back-to-back on his list.
But clearly, Brian Dable very much wanted Jaxson Dart as his guy. So, and we've spoken about how Brian Dable has a history of, working well with quarterbacks, helping them develop, helping them grow in their careers. In my eyes, this is just as much, betting on Brian Dable's ability to develop Jaxson Dart as it is in Jaxson Dart himself. And if you believe in Brian Dable and his ability to work with quarterbacks, then you should be all about this pick.
Daniel Jeremiah was 36.
Maybe that's what I was
just to give you an idea. But yeah, you're looking at between picks 35 and 55. I think that's kind of where he would have been.
And as we've spoken, quarterbacks always go before, they're expected to. They tend to always rise. Again, Cam Ward was Daniel Jeremiah's number 8 prospect, and he was the first pick in the draft. Quarterbacks always, because of the importance of the position, tend to go earlier than maybe their exact ranking would have them go.
Correct. I'm looking to see where Field Yates had him, just out of curiosity. Field Yates had him at 35, just to give you an example. Matt Miller, I think Matt Miller had a top 300, right, if I'm not mistaken? I think that's what Matt Miller puts out. Oh, top 600.
Ooh.
Good for you, Matt. one of our friends of the program here on the Giants Huddle podcast. Let's see. He had him at 37. Wow. So we're really getting consistently between 35 and 50. And I'll look up Jordan Reed's big board, and then I think that'll be the last one. Why don't you look Kuiper? Curious to see where Kuiper had him if you have that. I'm not sure what Kuiper puts out in terms of his
I don't know. He seemed to be pretty upset about Shador's fall last night.
Well, Mel Kiper had Shador as his number 1 quarterback. So, and that's fine. Look, everyone has their guys ranked differently. I understand that. And no one's opinion is wrong until we see, how these guys end up, lining up when all said and done.
Kiper had Jaxson Dart at 28.
28. Even okay, so you know what? It was closer to what you said, Matt. End of the first, early second, than mid-second.
Yeah, I was just trying to say that I hadn't seen the 3rd round grade on him anyway.
No, neither had I.
What I was trying to say.
No, and I totally agree with that. And Jordan Reed had him at 52. So we're all in that 35 to 55 range for the most part. 35 to 50 range, which is really early to middle second round, which is where most people had them. And again, quarterbacks always get elevated. You're going to have to pick them a little bit higher than maybe where they're graded in order to get them.
Yep.
And that's what the Giants did with Jaxson Dart. All right, we'll take a couple more calls here, and then we'll pat ourselves on the back over our mock draft. Let's go to Gil in Connecticut. Gil, you're up here on Big Blue Kickoff Live. How are you?
Good. How you guys doing today?
We're great, man.
Good.
First-time caller. I just wanted to call and talk a little bit about I'm just tired of the Joe Shane hate, man. I just feel like a lot of people, especially people who aren't fans of the Giants, have a lot of negative stuff to say about him. And I just think when you think about what John Mara, the checklist that John Mara gave at the end of the season, I feel like Joe Shane's knocking it out the park, to be honest with you. I mean, we can't really sit here and say that Jaxson Dart is our quarterback in the future just yet. The draft just happened yesterday, but I feel like he's doing a good job. He's beefed up the defense. He's brought in veteran quarterbacks who can win some games for us. I just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on that and how you feel he's doing so far.
I mean, I think he's attacked the areas that John Mara wanted him to attack. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, 100%. I mean, again, the day after the season ended, it was very clear from everyone quarterback was the most important position. Now, since the season has ended, they have re-signed Tommy DeVito to that, non-exclusive rights tender, which I believe is like a 1-year non-guaranteed contract. They have signed Russell Wilson to a 1-year deal, signed Jameis Winston to a 2-year deal, and now drafted Jaxson Dart. So they have completely revamped their quarterback room. So that is one big check. The defense was the other big issue the day after the season. And since the end of the season, they have signed one of the top corners in free agency in Paulson Adebo, signed one of the top safeties in Javon Holland, signed some very solid, rotational depth guys in Chauncey Golston, Roy Robertson Harris, Demetrius Flanagan Fowles, Chris Board, Jeremiah Ledbetter. Like, go through the list.
Roy Robertson Harris,
Yeah.
another guy. Yep.
They have added depth on the offensive line between James Hudson, Stone Forsythe, re-signing Greg Van Roden, re-signing Aaron Stinney. So far, Joe has really checked all of the boxes that needed to be checked. And there's still 2 days left in the draft. Plus, training camp doesn't start for another, 3 months? There can still be more moves made. We're going to soon get to the point where, I don't think we've gotten there yet, where free agent signings don't affect the compensatory pick formula.
Yep.
Once that deadline passes, you start to see more of those veteran free agents start to sign in the lead up to training camp. So who's to say that there won't be even more, solid depth pieces added as well in veterans? I think the hate that we see from a lot of people around the league, around the country, towards the Giants front office, I think it almost all just comes from Hard Knocks last year, to be honest.
Absolutely.
Before that, there was not the same level of criticism at all. Some people obviously didn't agree with all the moves, but it seems like Hard Knocks just really, really put, obviously, the front office and Joe in the spotlight, and that is where some of this hatred comes from. I don't think it's deserved either. I think between last offseason and so far this offseason, the Giants front office has absolutely crushed it. And, we obviously won't know until the games start, and none of this matters unless the Giants start winning games, obviously. We will all admit that. But certainly this team is a lot better today than it was on January 8th, whenever the day after the season ended. There's no doubt in my mind this team has taken a big step on paper. Now we got to see the results.
100%. 201-939-4513. And again, it's the results that matter.
Yes.
The results are going to matter.
100%.
They're just going to matter. That's the way it is.
Let's make it very clear.
Let's go to Alex in Philly. Alex, you're up next. How are you?
Hey, how you doing, guys?
We're great.
So I just got one thing and then one question.
Sure.
The first thing is I'm excited, man. I don't know about you guys, but this defense is looking pretty good on paper right now.
Yes, it is.
Of course, it's just on paper right now. We need results, but man, it's looking fast. It's looking furious out there. It's looking good. But my next question, honestly, is what do you think we're gonna do at 65? Because I'm contemplating. If Alfred Collins is there, how can we not take him? How can you not have almost 700 pounds in the middle of our defense on top of it? Good luck trying to run on us this year with that. But I'm just interested on where you guys would go. Would you go offensive guard there, or would you go defensive tackle, or maybe some other position? But I just can't see how we could pass on him if he's there.
Alex, I think you just got to pick the best player that's there, man. I think, one of these positions might get picked clean more than another. I would probably focus on offensive line or defensive tackle myself. I would save running back for the 4th round, thinking I can still get a good player at that spot in round 4 because it's so deep. So I think Matt said this before too. I would focus on one of those 2 trench spots and just pick whichever guy you think is best. My guess is that it's probably going to be a defensive tackle just because it's a deeper position, and that's where you're going to get the most value, and could have very well be Alfred Collins, sure. But that's where I would focus, because I do think at 105, if you really want a running back, you can get a running back at 105 and be just fine.
Yeah, I think you can get any of those offensive playmaker positions that we discussed earlier. You can get a good prospect at 105, whether it's running back, tight end, or wide receiver. There will be some guys that drop out at day 2, some very talented options. So I do think you can afford to wait there. I agree. I would 100% beef up the trenches, either side at 65. We were talking yesterday that if the Giants didn't trade 34, that we would want them to pick a lineman at 34. Obviously, that pick turned into Jaxson Dart. Now you only have one pick tonight. Whether it's a defensive tackle, which is definitely where I would lean as well.
And thank you, Alex. Appreciate the call.
Because, again, I think that is where the best player available on the Giants board could meet a position of need, somewhat of need, at 65. But I certainly would be very happy with one of these offensive linemen that we discussed earlier. Again, whether it's an interior guy, a tackle, you just never can have enough depth on the offensive line, as we see year in and year out. And some of the starters that the Giants currently have on the offensive line are not under contract after this upcoming season.
Yeah.
2 of the 5 presumed starters are on entering their contract years. So having a guy waiting in the wings, never a bad thing. So I would say lean towards defensive tackle. Could easily see offensive line as well. it wouldn't surprise me if they go one of those offensive playmaker positions, but I think you could just afford to wait until 105 to address that.
All right, so we did pretty good on our mock draft, Matthew Citak. Not too bad. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 picks on the button.
Okay.
Now, I'm giving us credit for Josh Simmons to the Chiefs, even though they traded down 1 pick to get him. I'm taking credit for that anyway. I'm not giving us credit for Travis Hunter, even though we had him at 2. It's to the wrong team, so I'm not going to give us credit for that.
I think we deserve credit for
that. You want credit for that one?
Yeah.
That was
we
an
said
easy
he was
one.
going to be the second pick.
It's a layup, though.
So why take it away from
that?
us?
All right, fine.
I'm not saying that's what we should hang our hat on. It certainly counts.
All right, so we got Ward, Hunter, Carter, Campbell. Those are the easy ones. We got Membo to the Jets at 7, with Genty not going 5. And dropping to the Raiders. That messed up our Raiders pick. So we got that one.
We did
wrong.
have Genty at 6 in last week's mock.
We did.
I know we're
didn't
talking
we?
about
Yeah,
yesterday's,
true.
but I just want to.
We got Tyler Warren, 14 to the Colts. That was a hit on the nose.
I don't think we expected Colston Loveland to go 10. But
No, I remember I did say, though, that it was very possible that Loveland would go ahead of Warren. So that wasn't shocking. We just...
I was going to say, just missed Pierce by a pick.
And we missed Shamar Stewart by a pick, too. Both of them were missed by 1 pick because Mike Green, the only 3 players, and this is the same for my personal mock draft, and I think this is a pretty good number. We only had 3 guys go in our first round mock that did not go in the first round last night. Just 3 players. That's it. Mike Green, Will Johnson, and Donovan Ezeraku. That's it. That's pretty good. 29 out of the 32 first-round picks, that's not bad.
It is pretty good.
So I'm happy with that.
I do just want to point out, those seem like those were all odd number picks.
They were.
Which I don't believe were my picks.
Oh, like you weren't going to put Mike Green or Will Johnson in the first round, but you are correct. I honestly noticed that too when I went through it. I was like, damn it.
I'm going to be honest. Of those 3 guys,
Ezeraku's probably the one guy, right?
No, I'm going to say Mike Green and Will Johnson, I fully expected to go in round
too.
1.
I agree.
Ezeraku, I thought would go round 1, but it's not surprising to me at all that he.
I didn't think
dropped
Tampa
to
would
day
pick
2.
a wide receiver.
Nor did I. That one
got me, man.
Kind of came out of nowhere.
That one got me.
I love that fit though. Oh boy, I love that.
I'm not sure how good of
him.
He might not be good in fantasy year number 1, but because of all
but
the
adding
targets,
him with Evans and Godwin.
Correct. But otherwise,
Baker Mayfield must
I'm
be
sorry, there was a 4th player, Shador. That was the 4th player that we had that did
Right.
not that we did not have going in round number 1.
That one I will say I'm surprised that he did not go last night.
Yeah,
I didn't think he was dropping out.
Otherwise, as far as I'm looking at this, right, Grant, Simmons, Barron, Hairston, Zabel, Booker, Campbell, Connerly, Loveland, Hampton, Golden, Pierce, Stewart, Starks, all those guys went in the first round. So not too bad. We hit 1, 2, 3. We had 8 picks on the head, which is pretty good in terms of draft place or team. In my final mock that I did that I messed around with.
Wait, sorry. Who did we have 33? I'm just curious.
Nick Scarton.
Okay.
But we had the Vikings because we had the Browns trading.
Right.
So that's probably not what it's going to be.
Yeah.
Now. But and then in my final mock it was the same deal. Those are the 4 guys I had wrong. It's Shador, Green, Ezeraku, Will Johnson, and Mike Green. So those are the 4 guys. So not bad. I hit Zabel, I hit Simmons, I missed Hairston and Barron by 1 pick on that. I'm not happy about that one.
Barron went earlier, didn't he?
Huh?
Where did Barron go?
No, I just meant I had them swapped.
Oh, yeah,
so I had Hairston, then Barron. If I had Barron, then Hairston, it would have worked. So that was really close on that. Membo, again, the Genty thing messed me up. If I had Membo still on the board, I would have given him to the Jets, but he was off the board for me to the Raiders. I missed Micah Williams, and same thing with our mock. We missed him by just 2 picks from Saints to Niners. So overall, not too bad. This is always going to be a very difficult draft to try to nail some of these picks. So real quick before you say goodbye, if the Giants had not traded up for Jaxson Dart and they were picking at 34, where do you think what would we be talking about right now in terms of who the Giants would pick?
So if they took Abdul at 3,
yep, and then did not pick again, and had their regular, and they weren't picking a quarterback,
and they were not picking a quarterback.
Yes.
Okay. I would think it's a little too rich, but Darius Alexander, I would think. I mean, he's probably the top defensive tackle.
Would you consider Will Johnson or Nick Emenware? I don't think you could pick the safety because you have 2 guys already.
The safety, no, but even with corner, you have Adebo, Deontay Banks, and Drew
I
Phillips.
agree. I'll tell
I'm
you
happy
what.
with those as my 3 starting corners.
I'd be more than willing to pick a quarterback here. If they had not picked one at 24, I would, because there's no
and
one
if
else
everyone
left.
dropped.
Well, yeah, because there's no one else left. Like, I would pick Dart or Shook or Sanders or Milrow over all these guys that are left. I thought one of these other guys would drop, and they haven't. I mean, if you hadn't picked Carter, I would pick Ezeraku. But you already have Carter.
Yeah,
you can't pick another edge.
If you hadn't picked Carter, then Mike Green would be in the mix.
Yeah, right.
Zaraku, for sure.
Yeah, so
You
it
know-
makes it tough.
You know who I'm going to throw out? And I did mention this, I believe, in last week's mock draft exercise.
Burden?
Luther Burden.
Yeah.
I'm a little surprised, not shocked, a little surprised he's still there. And he actually went on social media last night.
I saw.
You saw?
Yeah, I saw it.
After not getting picked in round 1, which clearly was a little bit of a disappointment from him, he went out to the, I believe it was the Missouri facility or whatever practice field you want to call it, at like midnight, and got a workout in at midnight last night, basically being like, I'm going to prove everyone wrong. So based on how the draft board is currently sitting, Luther Burden would certainly be in consideration for me at 34. I think
he's my next wide receiver.
As I mentioned, we're going to see a run of wide receivers early tonight. The beginning of the second round. It's going to be Luther Burden. It's going to be the 2 Iowa State guys. I think any of those 3 would be pretty solid picks. Trey Harris.
Yeah, the highest graded players I have
Which, by the way,
Luther Burden, Jalen Knoll, Darius Alexander, Savon Ravel, the corner. But again, I don't think the Giants are picking a corner. And then the running backs. I mean, so you could start thinking about Quinshon Junkins.
Ooh.
You could think about TreVeyon Henderson.
You know, would be happy about that. Someone upstairs.
Yes, Dan Salmo would be
Dan
very
Salmo.
happy with that. Those are the other guys I think you could talk about with that pick. You were going to bring up somebody else. I'm sorry, Matt.
No, I just another wide receiver in the mix, but definitely below those first 3. Trey Harris.
He might be there at 65.
He might.
And him and Jaxson Dart clearly have a relationship. There's something to keep in mind
Yes, sir.
as we move forward. A long day ahead of us, my friend.
I got home last night at almost 2:30 in the morning.
Yeah, I was around 2 o'clock.
And then I was up at 7:30 updating the site this morning.
My daughter,
Not much sleep.
my daughter woke me up at 7:30 as I'm trying to open my eyes because all my allergies with the trees. It's like crusted shut. It's disgusting. Yeah, it's really not fun. The first thing out of her mouth, Daddy, why didn't you go take me to the draft party last night? I'm like, oh my gosh. Are we having a play date this weekend? And I'm like trying to like get my mind to work, and I'm like, good morning. Good to see you too, sweetheart. Oh gosh.
Yeah, it's already been felt like a long day, and it's not even.
Oh yeah, we
not
got
even begun.
Long way to go. All right, folks.
Buckle up.
Buckle up is right. Thanks for being with us here on Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the Giants, in the Hackensack Meridian Health Podcast Studio. Keep getting better. For Matthew Citak, I'm John Schmeelk. Again, just a reminder. We are going to come on live after pick 65 tonight for about an hour, so get on the lines. We'll be streaming live on the app, Giants.com, and, of course, on the Giants YouTube channel. So tune in. It'll be Paul, O'Hara, and I again. Right, Sean's here again tonight, right, Pearson? He'll have to step out for a little while to do an interview with whomever we draft, and we'll go from there. So thanks very much, everybody. Thanks for being with us. I hope you're enjoying our draft coverage. We have a bunch of stuff coming out with these guys. We were watching NFL Network. I believe that was Abdul Carter that's here, if I'm not mistaken.
And I believe Jaxson Dart is not far behind.
In the middle of the Judy Batista live shot on the NFL Network. So we'll press conference to them later. I'm not sure if are we streaming those live, do you know, the press conferences?
I don't think we're streaming that live.
Well, we'll post them as soon as possible after
they will
done.
be up on the website, YouTube, almost immediately after.
Yes, they will be up, so go check that out. My draft season with Tony Pauline, recapping the first round, is up there, and our review shows as well. So go check those out on the Giants YouTube channel and on our podcast platforms. For Citak, I'm Schmeelk. We'll see Matt again next week. You'll see me tonight, and then tomorrow again at 11:30 for more coverage of the NFL draft and whatever the Giants might do. We'll see you then.